Good afternoon and welcome to the Strategic Plan Implementation Town Hall. My name is Elizabeth Van Boxdale and I am overseeing Drexel's Strategic Plan implementation efforts. I wanted to provide a brief snapshot of our agenda for today. Please note that this meeting is being recorded so that individuals not able to join us today may view it at their convenience. In a moment, we will receive welcoming remarks from President Fry, Executive Vice President, Treasurer, and Chief Operating Officer Helen Bowman, and Provost Jensen. At the conclusion of their remarks, I will give a presentation of our approach to implementation, including introducing you to members of the implementation core team who will be driving our implementation efforts. I will also be giving some examples of our current initiative team's activities. I have invited some members of the implementation core team to provide remarks. Specifically, we will be joined by Ahaji Scheffler, who serves as our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Liaison, Kevin Owens, who represents the faculty, and Kevin Coleman, who represents the professional staff members. I would also like to mention that we are working very closely with Chief Diversity Officer Kim Golston, who is overseeing the anti-racism task force work, and we have invited Kim to be a panelist for the Q&A portion of this town hall. Thank you to those of you who have pre-submitted questions. We will turn to your questions at the conclusion of the formal remarks. Please use the Q&A feature of Zoom to pose questions during the session, but we would appreciate if you could submit them once the formal presentations have concluded. Now it is my pleasure to introduce President John Fry to provide some introductory remarks. President Fry.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, special thanks for all the effort that you put into this work over the last 6 months, you and a very extended team. It's been really wonderful to watch you all work so well together and to take the vision of this strategic plan and begin to actualize it. So thank you. So I want to thank all of our colleagues for joining today, give you a warm welcome, and just say what a difficult and remarkable year this has been for all of us. And I want to start by expressing my personal gratitude to each and every one of you for your unwavering commitment to Drexel during such a difficult time, the amount of self-sacrifice that each of you made to make sure that our university was strong, the incredible hard work of this university during this challenging time, and also your flexibility, because we had to call audibles throughout the year and everyone did such a nice job of adapting to new circumstances quickly and as cheerfully as they could. So thank you for keeping this university strong during this really, really challenging time. And as a result, we are really in strong and very, very stable shape at this point, a great way to contemplate the future. So a couple of key indicators of that strength and stability. The first is this really talented and really deserving and really large class of first-year students that we'll be welcoming in September. As of this morning, 3,119 strong. That's up 420 from the previous year, and we're melting at a slower pace. And so this is a solid class, but among the many great things about this class, maybe the greatest thing is that 31% of them are the first in their family to go to college. I mean, that's a remarkable statistic and really sort of true to our history in terms of where we started. Also about 26% Pell eligible. So we continue to be committed to access and opportunity as a university. So proud of that statistic, and congratulations to Evelyn Thimba and her great team for bringing that class in. The second is that our campaign has just crested over 700 million, about 704 million on our way to 750 million. And what's great about that is that this has been a campaign about human capital, scholarships and endowments for program, endowments for faculty, chairs, and the like. And so congratulations to David Unruh and his team for that work. And an endowment that is now over $950 million, thanks to great performance by Kathy Alozis and Helen Bowman and their teams, but also the fundraising and the careful management of resources. And so those are three really good indicators of progress. So from this very strong and very stable base that we have, we can begin to contemplate a really exciting future for our university not only in the decade ahead, but beyond. And Drexel 2030, Designing the Future, our strategic plan does just that in terms of imagining all the possibilities that we have as a university. I want to thank the Executive Planning Committee, the EPC, for their tireless work over the better part of the last 2 years, also assisted by the previous work of the pre-planning groups that preceded the EPC. And I think among the many contributions that the EPC has made, they were able to really capture the true distinctiveness of Drexel that sets us apart and will establish a strong competitive position for us among other universities going forward. And the work is terrific, and Elizabeth and the team will talk about it later on. But thanks to the EPC, thanks for the work of the pre-planning groups. And in addition to all that, there are two other significant work streams that we had this year. The first is the Anti-Racism Task Force, and special thanks to Arudis Foster and Kim Golston and Sabir Sahu and Lucy Kerman and about 100 other colleagues for their work in leading that effort forward. I'm just finishing a letter to the community. We'll release that report this week. As you recall, the Anti-Racism Task Force examined practices across Drexel to more effectively support our Black community and to eradicate racism in policies and practices. And again, you'll see the report later this week. Also, the effort of Drexel Forward, developing opportunities for gaining new revenue streams, for seeking continued efficiencies and managing our costs, and also to increasing our research capacity. And that's work that is now all being integrated together, those three work streams. And so all of this represents a really ambitious and far-reaching undertaking with, by the way, as you would expect, attendant challenges for implementation, which is sort of why we're here today. The purpose of this town hall is twofold. First, we want to provide you with full information about the implementation process for the strategic plan and how we create the conditions necessary for our success. And then the second is to commit to a regular dialogue and communication on that work, the actual doing of the work, and then the progress that we're making. And so many of you will be involved, and I'm grateful to all of you for your commitment so far and the commitment that I know you'll give us in the future. So with that, let me turn it over to my colleague, Helen Bowman.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time today. I appreciate attending the town hall. I just want to briefly continue the conversation that John had started about the strength of the universe. We do have preliminary numbers through April for fiscal year 21, and we are projecting a margin just shy of $65 million. And it's really for two reasons. It's the hard work of the university. So we provided proactive measures to bring a balanced budget to the board. Those measures were then supplemented by the favorable restricted revenues we received from the federal government. We received significant COVID-19 relief funding to help fund the operations. And we also, as a community, came together to curtail our unrestricted expenditures. And so I just want to thank everybody for their hard work in coming together during a very trying year to put the university in such firm financial footing. We obviously have continued work to do for a sustainable model moving forward, but I just want to express my extreme gratitude for what you did for fiscal year 21 together as a community. In addition to the COVID-related funding, the Office of Government and Community Relations, along with President Fry, they're continuing to work with the public sector to secure additional funding to support both the College of Medicine as well as St. Chris during these very trying times, highlighted by the closure of Hahnemann, the purchase of St. Chris, and then recently the pandemic. So we are working very hard to get external resources to further support the university, the College of Medicine, and St. Christopher's. As for today's main topic, I wanted to commend the work as well of the EPC on the creation of Drexel 2030, Designing Our Future. I want to acknowledge the partnership of so many faculty and professional staff for their work with our consultants that led to the Drexel Forward recommendations. These results of this will help us grow. And that's really an opportunity for the university to grow in not just in the undergraduate population, but graduate and some other non-traditional ways to grow our revenue to better position the university in this current market. I also want to acknowledge and commend all of you that worked on the anti-racism task force. We're going to align the recommendations of the strategic plan, Drexel Forward, and the anti-racism task force in a collaborative and thoughtful manner to help ensure the future success and strength of Drexel University. All of these efforts were thoughtful, data-driven, comprehensive, and have brought us to this point to prepare Drexel for the future. So each of these efforts will allow the university to bring into focus the core elements that we as a university must commit our energy and our resources to in order to secure our current and future. Look forward to the implementation phase of the strategic plan that will allow us to forge a future for Drexel grounded in academic excellence and financial stability. And at this time, I would pass it over to Provost Jensen. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for being here. I think it's really important we continue these community discussions as we work through the strategic plan and implementation. So thank you for taking the time. I also want to echo the thanks that John and Helen offered to all our faculty and professional staff for everything you did to get us through an incredibly challenging year. So it feels so good to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you for helping us through this past year. So I'm going to cover just a couple slides pretty briefly. And what I want to do is just sort of provide a high-level view of the process that brought us to where we are today and talk a little bit about the major elements of the strategic plan. So let me start here. The foundations for Drexel 2030, Designing the Future, really started back in 2018 with our pre-planning groups. And you can see the 4 pre-planning groups on the left there. And all of these groups have fed into kind of where we are today in different ways. Thinking Forward led to the creation of the EPC, which I'll talk more about in a second. The work of Institutional Effectiveness Committee is continuing in different subcommittees. And academic resource planning really helped my office, working with Helen's team, create what we call the Provost RCM Working Group. And this has really been helpful in moving forward our plans for RCM. And finally, the Retention Planning Committee is now incorporated into our implementation plan as its own initiative. So each of these is kind of fed in its own way. And why don't we go to the next slide. So one of the major outcomes of the pre-planning process was the creation of the EPC, the Executive Planning Committee, in 2019. And so the charge to the EPC was to build off of the pre-planning work and complete the strategic plan. And so the EPC, the goal was to create a plan that would help address the major shifts that are coming in higher education and the broad challenges that we face. And what happened, of course, is as the EPC was working through the strategic planning process, the university and the world, quite frankly, were impacted significantly by COVID and by the social unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd. And so for the university, those events led to the creation of the Anti-Racism Task Force and also the Drexel Forward project. So it's now the integration and the connection of these different initiatives coming together bring us to this moment where we are integrating this work into one implementation plan. And implementation is well underway, and there'll be more discussion of that to come with Elizabeth in a minute or two. And so let me move to the last slide. I wanted just to make a couple remarks about the strategic plan itself. And so here is a very high level summary of the plan. On the left, you see the 6 imperatives: culture of equity, empowered students, immersive experiential learning, agile curriculum, powerful partnerships, and innovative research. Those are, of course, sort of the pillars of the plan. And then on the right, I think, thinking about kind of how we do what we do and also what we do. So I think the keys are this: the leverage, the fairly unique position of the university as an urban comprehensive co-op university. How can we leverage those characteristics to really think differently, to reimagine higher education moving forward? And the EPC spent a lot of time thinking about the integration of our research with our teaching, our academic programs, and our external partnerships in the broader community. And so that's a central theme throughout the strategic plan. And then there's the kind of what we do and focusing on our strengths in health, technology, engineering, design, and the social science and the impact of these things on society. So at the highest level, that's a view of the strategic plan and sort of how we got to this point. And at this moment, I would like to introduce Elizabeth Van Boxdale, who's our Chief Strategy Officer and heading the implementation process for us. And she's going to walk you through some of that process. So Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. So what I now wanted to do is really delve into our approach for the implementation and really the process by which we're engaging our broad, diverse, and creative community. In designing our approach, we really prioritized a number of principles that I'm showing here. The most important is engagement. We really want to seek the views and input from our Drexel community. I want to emphasize that each of the initiative teams that I'm going to describe for you is chaired by a faculty member, a professional staff member, and a senior administrator. This is really intentional so that we can promote diverse perspectives and really problem solving. It was very heartening that following our call for volunteers earlier this year, we received over 200 self-nominations and nominations across the Drexel community that we are now engaging in this effort. Our design of the implementation is really to be collaborative. I think we've all seen that during the time of COVID, when our community came together, the power of collaboration is unparalleled. It really allows also for innovation, which we're desperately seeking in our community. We also are looking for diversity, not only diversity of race, but also diversity of thought. And I'm delighted that Ahaji Scheffler is on our team because she's also looking at the composition of our teams to ensure diversity all around. We also want to be really data informed as we move forward, not only with our internal data collection, but also with benchmarking externally. And we want to be result oriented. As I'll show you in some of the examples that I will provide, we're going to be tracking to key performance metrics. We want to be as transparent as possible, and our goal is to be as communicative as possible, starting with this town hall today. So our first order of business was to create an implementation core team. This team was really developed to draw on many of the incredible talent that we have here at Drexel. I want to point out that some members of the core team previously served on the EPC, which was really important for continuity and making sure we're adhering to the tenets of our strategic plan. Members of the EPC that serve on the core team include Sujoy Das, Jonathan Zeigert, Kevin Owens, and David Unruh. We also invited 2 deans to the team, as well as professional staff members that are data-focused, result-oriented, and effective multitaskers. And as I mentioned, we want to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, prioritize our communication approach, and also effectively managing a project. So we have a teaching faculty member who's really an expert in project management who's helping kick us off. So our core team is engaged, creative, and driven. And I do want to point out that our website is now live on implementation. if you go to the strategic plan website, you'll see a tab on implementation. And I won't be going through names of specific individuals, but I really encourage you to go to that site to see the individuals who are serving on all of these teams. I do want to point out, though, and recognize Jonathan Zeigert, because he played a critical role in the early days of helping design this implementation structure. But I want to say that the entire core team has played an active role in refining it. So I also want to say, if we look at the next slide, I'm going to be going through in detail this structure. We really wanted to come out to the community much earlier than June, but I want to assure you that we are taking our time in making sure that we are confident in this approach, that we're really, the tenets and principles that we're using to design this approach are working effectively. So we really feel now that we're ready to roll out the structure for your feedback and thoughts. So this implementation structure is really going to be executed through a structure of teams that's going to allow for cross collaboration, targeted goals, and flexibility. And now what I'd like to do is really walk you through the implementation structure. So as I mentioned, the implementation core team's role is going to support the many teams that I'm about to show you in multi-project management. They're going to ensure integration and consistency across the initiatives. They're going to help develop and execute communication strategies, ensure accountability through transparency, and also challenge and support the initiative teams. And building from the Drexel Forward work, we identified 3 focus areas in which to prioritize our efforts. The first is driving current and future enrollment success. The second is efficiency and effectiveness in mission delivery. And finally, new markets and diversification of revenue sources. Under each one of these focus areas, we have our initiative teams. So let me walk you through those. Under driving current and future enrollment, we have retention and student success. As was mentioned earlier, retention was part of the pre-planning efforts in the pre-planning phase of our strategic plan. This will now fold seamlessly into this initiative team. Graduate education has been a priority for several years, but we're putting together an initiative team to build on our success and continue to grow these programs. We will also have a team focused on marketing and external communication to ensure that we're as optimized as we can be to effectively market our programs. We'll also look at our internal communications and our digital infrastructure to make sure that we're all aligned and optimized. With respect to efficiency and effectiveness in mission delivery, we're looking at research administration to really create an environment that is permissive for our faculty to tackle and be successful in getting grants internally, externally, federally, et cetera. We're also building an initiative team around pricing and financial aid. As many of you may know, there are a number of institutions of higher education that have looked at tuition resets, looking at pricing. This is what this initiative team will be focused on. Our operations, making sure that we're streamlined and that our service level agreements are optimized to deliver the best possible experience at Drexel. And finally, under efficiency and effectiveness, housing, facilities, and auxiliary. Can we better utilize our housing outside of even the academic year? Can we improve on our facilities as well as our auxiliary services? And finally, new markets and diversification of revenue. A priority of the strategic plan is really to drive increases in revenue to support our success. So we have an initiative team focused on program and curricular innovation, on a new market, undergrad online, in which we feel that we have a really great opportunity for success. Continuing education and lifelong learning. A tenet of the strategic plan is for once you come to Drexel, we hope you'll be a lifelong learner and return for all of your educational needs. And then partnerships, which is at the core of what a Drexel education is. All of these initiative teams, as I mentioned, will have chairs, a faculty chair, a professional staff chair, and a senior administrator. These chairs will then interact in focus area chairs meetings So they will do so within their own focus area, but also across focus areas. So for instance, undergrad online may need to think about, we need more market-driven undergrad online programs and solicit information from program and curricular innovation. Undergrad online might also want to determine how to price these programs, and they will interact with pricing and financial aid. This is really to allow, not having any silos, but true collaboration amongst the initiative teams as well as the focus areas. In order to also support all these activities, we are generating a collaborative council, which will be populated by members of the core team that are there to support the activities of the initiative teams and the focus area groups, as well as members of the executive planning committee to ensure adherence to the core tenets of the strategic plan. Importantly, as many of you know from the strategic plan, there are 6 imperatives: research impact, partnership, student empowerment, equity culture, adaptable curricula, and learning experiences. We want to make sure that all of these imperatives and tenets are infused in each one of the initiative teams. Therefore, a designee from each of the initiative teams will sit on imperative teams, such that a culture of equity is permeating all the initiative teams. This will repeat for each one of the imperatives that I just outlined. We will then have chairs of the imperative teams similarly interacting with members of the EPC as well as the implementation core team. And these will all interact with our senior leaders, our board of trustees members, our faculty, our staff, students, alumni, and partners. And in this design, we believe it lays the groundwork for what I mentioned, which was innovation, collaboration, and moving the institution forward. So again, we really feel that starting this way will enable our success moving forward. Next slide, please. I just wanted to remind everyone about who is on the EPC and show you how they will be infused into the implementation structure. On the next slide, you'll see, as I mentioned, that we have a number of EPC members that already sit on the implementation core team. We will have other members of the EPC now sitting on the focus areas collaborative council or on the imperative integration council. These are going to be our advisors who spent all of that time creating this strategic plan to support now the diverse and engaged community of faculty, professional staff, and senior administrators we have serving on these initiative teams. Next slide. So let me give you just a little bit of our progress to date. Since January, we formed the core team. We also developed plans. We wanted to ensure that all of our initiative teams are going to have access to all the information and research that was conducted during Drexel Forward as they move forward. So we're creating really the framework to support the initiative teams. Between January and April, we formed 3 initiative teams: undergraduate online, continuing education and lifelong learning, and partnerships. And we've drafted membership for 5 additional teams: pricing and financial aid, housing facilities and auxiliary, program and curricular innovation, retention and student success, and graduate education. Between April and May, we have met with the teams to charge them and discuss their goals, and also discuss the intersection of Drexel Forward, the Anti-Racism Task Force, and the work of the Institutional Effectiveness Committee. And here we are in June at the first community town hall, kicking this off to communicate to you what our implementation structure is. And if you haven't heard from us yet, and you've been self-nominated or nominated, we have not convened all of the initiative teams. So please be patient with us, because we are going to be reaching out to many of you who may not have been reached out to yet. Next slide, please. So let me give you an example of one of our initiative teams. And I really want to walk you through how we've gone about discussing with them some questions that we want them to ponder. First, is what they're working on aligned with Drexel's mission? Is it connected to the Drexel University strategic plan? What is the sustained financial impact of the activity? Will it contribute to driving increased student satisfaction? And what is the feasibility for their near-term implementation? Again, we're really working not to be prescriptive of our initiative teams, but to help guide them and allow them the space in which to ideate and innovate. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the undergraduate online initiative team. So with the Drexel Forward opportunity, we discovered that there was really an opportunity for building out undergraduate online. This slide reflects, and you can find this again on the website, the members of the undergraduate online initiative team. Again, a cross-cutting swath of individuals from across the university engaged in a common goal at how can we facilitate and build undergrad online programming. So this committee has met regularly and identified 2 areas of focus. One is to influence positive change to drive net tuition revenue in existing bachelor's programs. And the other is to recommend the future of online bachelor's program, not only new programs, but also can we infuse into the first-time full-time experience more online education, so more for the traditional learner. On the right is the guide that's provided to each one of our initiative teams, explicating what Drexel 2030 is and providing some goals for them to consider. So for this undergrad online initiative team, benchmarking research had shown that currently in the region, there are over 100,000 adults that have some college education but no degree. And Drexel only owns about 1% of that market. And therefore, would we be able to capitalize on the need for these adult learners to complete their degrees and provide their education here at Drexel? And we received this information by having the initiative team partner with the Educational Advisory Board, or EAB, a company that has worked with Drexel in many fronts, with the Office of Research and Innovation, with institutional advancement, with the Drexel Solutions Institute. And what they conducted was a portfolio health check and did benchmarking reporting on all of our current 10 undergrad online programs. They also did some secret shopping and pretended they were an applicant to an undergrad online program to give us a score of how we did during the application phase. That work resulted in a pilot program that I want to tell you about. 3 programs were identified: the BS in Computing, Security, and Technology, the BS in Business Administration, and the BS in Education. And what was done was there was an increase in the discount for these 3 programs, a marketing blitz, and a reduced time to decision, as well as a reduced time to transfer credit evaluation to 7 days. We initiated this pilot in March, and it will continue until August, the deadline for applications to these undergrad online programs. And a business analysis or financial analysis indicated if we have a 40% increase in new students, this will result in a positive increase in our net tuition revenue. Next slide, please. And this is just to show you how the increased discount really positions us to be more competitive in the marketplace. For the business administration undergrad online degree, with the 40% discount, we were really pricing ourselves out of the market. With the increased discount to 52%, we are much more in line with schools in which our students who are accepted here eventually opt to go. Similarly, with the bachelor's in computing and security technology, with the 52% discount, we are less expensive than Arizona State University online. So this is the type of work that the initiative teams are engaged in, thinking thoughtfully about the question at hand, working if necessary with getting some benchmark data, and then creating a pilot program. On the next slide, you can see that we're also tracking to these key performance indicators. In the online space, time to decision, as well as time to transfer credit evaluation and financial aid packaging is key to success. We had been at 21 days plus in the past, and now in this pilot, we're pushing to go to 7 days or 14 days. That is the goal. So we're partnering with enrollment management and the academic units in order to do this. And on the next slide shows that marketing blitz has been happening since March, And this is usually in digital marketing space. So that just shows the activity. The blue arrow indicates where we are now in June. And our goal, the numbers below indicate our goal for the new completed applications to have us reach that 40% increase in new matriculants to receive or to reach the positive net tuition revenue. So again, this is an example of how the initiative team of Undergrad Online is conducting its work. Next slide, please. The next one I just want to tell you about is continuing education and lifelong learning. And I'll just show you on the next two slides the membership of these of this committee. But what I really want to present to you is the importance of how they're organizing themselves. So they are looking to really look at the university level. Many academic units are thinking of lifelong learning within their school or college, but can we look holistically at a university-wide branding that would highlight the value proposition of continuing education and lifelong learning at Drexel? What are the categories we should focus in? The credit and non-credit programs, the pricing. So the initiative team has been tasked with structuring and producing a centralized business plan to centralize the continuing education and lifelong learning, which has been abbreviated as CEL, so that we can ensure consistency with university and colleges' financial objectives and goals, and importantly, to track our success. So these centralized resources would then lead to standardized agreements, standardized course options, support from an instructional design team, a marketing and sales team, technical and delivery support team, and standardized invoicing. These are things that don't currently exist, but that the initiative team is working on. And also how to build approaches for fostering collaboration among Drexel colleges and departments. Next slide. So in this manner, it's a hub and spoke model. We're working together, working collaboratively, individuals sitting on this initiative team who are passionate about continuing education and lifelong learning are coming together to try to propose a new way of doing things at Drexel. Next slide, please. The timeline for their work, they've already begun their work in March and April. We'll have a 3-month check-in with them upcoming. We will expect a 6-month check-in with them in September or October, and then a 1-year check-in. But again, the core team, and we've identified sponsors from our core team to oversee these initiative teams, to keep track of them, manage any pain points they might be experiencing, but to really help them continue their work at a deep level. The next slide then talks about partnerships. Partnerships has actually arranged itself around subcommittees. Subcommittee number 1 is looking at deepening interdisciplinary partnerships and strengthening regional engagement, whereas subcommittee number 2 is expanding opportunities and identifying innovative solutions. On the next slide, that's just shown to you how these two subcommittees are working together, and then they come together in order to develop a unified approach and explore possibilities. As the development of partnerships is critical to our strategic plan, this initiative team and focusing its work by these two subcommittees is likely to make some significant advancements in how we manage our partner relations. The last one that I wanted to talk about is program and curricular innovation. This initiative team is also building on the composition of subcommittees. It actually has 5 subcommittees with an oversight committee that will be managing all of the subcommittees. One subcommittee is going to be focusing on the infrastructure to allow for curricular innovation. And I do want to say, I know I'm going quickly through these slides, but you're able to see the team membership on the website should you desire to do so. I also want to make a point that we are being very adaptable and flexible, and committee membership can be modified as we move forward. Subcommittee number 2 is experiential learning in the classroom environment. Subcommittee number 3 is encouraging use of evidence-based teaching. Subcommittee number 4 is curricular innovation in graduate and postgraduate education. And finally, a needs assessment for curricular innovation. So this is a very complex but exciting initiative team focused on multiple aspects of how we can innovate our program and curricula. Next slide, please. So the last few slides are just about communication and information sharing. What I hope to accomplish today was create awareness that implementation is underway. I wanted to inform you on the scope and organizational structure and set expectation that this is a university-wide sustained initiative, and engagement and feedback is key to our success. And how you can engage with us is we already have in orange are the teams that have already been completed, in yellow are the teams that are drafting, and in silver are the ones that we have yet to put together. So there's opportunity for continued engagement. Next slide. So you can learn more about implementation on the website that I just mentioned to you, which provides a high-level background. There'll be a video explaining the implementation matrix, the charges to the team members, and there's also a section on FAQs. You can, on this website, there's a Qualtrics survey where you can actually ask a question or provide feedback to the core team. If your whatever question is asked, we will populate the FAQ. We want to hear from our community members, especially those that may not be serving on one of the existing teams. And we also have an email address. So if you don't want to fill out the Qualtrics survey with your name, you can also email us at drexel2030@drexel.edu. So again, we'll be working over the summer into fall on continuing to build the initiative teams. The provost and Helen Bowman have agreed that starting in September, they will resume their visits to academic units and administrative units to discuss in a town hall setting and have more dialogue with everyone about our progress. And we also look over the summer to having some roundtables and discussions with members of the EPC and the core team. So thank you for your attention. I know this was a lot of information, but we really wanted to show you the work that we're doing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ahaji Scheffler to make some remarks. Ahaji?
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. So I have had the privilege of working with Kim Goldston closely since July of last year as one of the two co-administrators for the Anti-Racism Task Force. And the task force produced 200 comprehensive recommendations that are intended to advance Drexel toward becoming really an anti-racist institution. And the good news is that many of these recommendations are already in motion within their respective offices. So my role now on the core team is supporting integration of the recommendations within the culture of equity imperative, because we know that to ensure that these recommendations are successfully integrated across the university, we absolutely must have transparent systems of accountability and ongoing review. So this will be housed under the equity imperative team that will provide accountability throughout the entire strategic plan implementation process. As was mentioned earlier, we'll be mapping the task force recommendations to the appropriate initiative teams so that the 12 DEI leads from those teams can infuse the recommendations throughout their work streams. And they'll also build upon this anti-racism work to include other facets of equity and inclusion. And it's important to note that any recommendations that don't fit within the 12 initiatives will be tracked by the Office of Equality and Diversity through a new diversity advisory council that's being formed. So President Fry mentioned earlier that the task force final report is going to be shared out soon. We know many of you are very anxious to see those details, and that will be available on the new anti-racism task force website, which adds another lens of transparency by actually tracking the progress that we're making toward fulfilling those recommendations. We also have an event coming up this Wednesday where an overview of the recommendations will be shared in a virtual roundtable toward an anti-racist university. There's still time to register for that in Career Pathway. And there'll be other community discussions over the coming months, including a session for our colleagues who served on the task force. And of course, lastly, Drexel is launching a new DEI curriculum for all of our community, including faculty, staff, and students. So these are just some of the initial steps that we're taking to help carry out Drexel's commitment to anti-racism. And of course, there's much, much more to come. So thank you for your attention. And now I'll pass it over to Kevin Owens, Chair of Faculty Senate and Associate Professor from the Department of Chemistry.
Thanks, Ahaji. I'd just like to emphasize a couple of things that Elizabeth said. The initiative teams that have been forming and that will be forming in the future are very inclusive. They include faculty, they include professional staff, they include administrators from across the university. They're going to work in a data-informed way. We have a lot of data here at the university, and we're going to try to make better use of it. And I just want to, really emphasize, if you want to be involved, please get involved. Also, if you're asked to be involved, please be generous with your time. We realize everyone has a full plate these days, but this is the Drexel future that we're all going to be building together. So now I'd like to throw it over to Kevin Coleman, who's the Assistant Director for Strategic Partnerships at Drexel University Online.
Thank you, Kevin. I just want to recognize and really applaud the tremendous talent and commitment to excellence that is pervasive across the Drexel organization. Collaboration with faculty and professional staff in various departments who interact with our students and partner organizations really make us more efficient and allow us to offer greater value to our stakeholders while presenting a united Drexel University. A unified Drexel that's even more responsive to market needs and brings its diverse strength to address those needs more than ever before. Now, offering interdisciplinary client-facing programs and relevant professional development engagement for partner employee groups really showcase our faculty expertise. And these are just a couple of examples that demonstrate the positive impact of the collaboration that we have. Now, working together and gaining appreciation for what others do at the university, we share knowledge, we build relationships, we produce creative solutions for overcoming former problems, and we become better. I think the pandemic that accelerated the opportunity to collaborate more deliberately across the Drexel community has helped many of us realize why we can be proud contributors to the 2030 direction of Drexel University. Now, our efforts continue, so I would encourage more professional staff to engage in the work and really work with us through the growth and change process. So learn how you can serve on some of the initiative teams, and it would be great to hear from you and to add your voices.